Most people don't even realize which license type will make the most cannabis millionaires. And let me tell you, it's not the license that you think either. So there's numerous ways one can get into the licensed cannabis industry. And a few of those common ones are through cultivation, manufacturing or processing, distribution, and obviously retail stores. But there's one way that outperforms all the others. And this is something that not many people talk about. I'm gonna go over this by the end of this video and touch on all the other aspects of all the license types. If you don't know me, I'm Chris. I've been in the wholesale cannabis industry here in California since 2004. And I've also held one of the earliest state distribution licenses when California went legal back in 2018. I built and sold a licensed cultivation facility that I scaled to $3 million before starting my brand Zodix in 2022. Zodix has been in over 100 licensed retail stores here in California, which I followed up with my second brand, Lowski, which was launched in 2024, where I provide fire indoor for more affordable prices to the public. Today, I teach cannabis entrepreneurs how to scale to $100,000 months with their licensed cannabis brand without having to own a license. We go over how to scale your licensed cannabis brand daily on my private school community. I also offer a one-on-one guidance program to teach cannabis entrepreneurs how to scale their licensed brand profitably. Click the link in the description for both. License type number 1, cultivation. So obviously we need plant material to start with anything, whether it's flower, whether that's making oils and distillate, hash rosin, doesn't matter, it all comes from the plant. So cultivation has to take place. So the issue with New York is there's not a lot of indoor cultivation facilities up and running yet. The majority of the biomass being grown for cannabis is from outdoor cultivation facilities, outdoor greenhouse, mixed light, basically a lot of square footage of canopy of those types and not a lot of canopy square footage of indoor grows. We're all hoping that changes soon and the state can figure out how to roll out these indoor facilities quicker, as that's what the market demands for high quality flower. The outdoor facilities are better suited for using that biomass for extraction and other means. However, the big issue with New York is the climate is unreliable. So it could rain within a matter of moments and not even expect it potentially. There's also no seasons with zero rain. In California, we have the entire summer with no rain, and that's consistent year after year after year. So we know that we can plant stuff in June or July and have it grow all the way until September or October with no rain issues. And the reason why one day of rain can cause a huge issue is because of the humidity changes that it causes. The main variables that cannabis grows under is heat, humidity, and light. So if you're not controlling all these parameters, and then additional parameters too, but these are the 3 core ones, heat, humidity, and light, you're not gonna have a quality, consistent product. And that's the issue with growing outdoor, greenhouse, light depth in New York, is that humidity is unpredictable. So it really comes down to needing these indoor facilities in order to grow the quantity of biomass for indoor quality that's required. So until that levels out, New York's gonna be trying to find its foothold. In addition, running a cultivation facility or cultivation license is extremely risky. And it requires a group of highly qualified, talented individuals, not just a single grower. That's old school scarcity mind mentality of thinking about it. It needs a quality team with quality processes, with quality equipment, with quality build out. Everything needs to be on point. There's no room for error. We're not figuring things out like the old days. This is the real deal, the major leagues. There's no time to fuck around. So if you own a cultivation license, there's a very small room for margin of error. As well as once you get your cultivation facility dialed in, that still doesn't guarantee that every single harvest is gonna be a home run harvest. So you're gonna be up against potential setbacks, issues with the cultivation, It's issues with mold, toxins, bacteria, pesticides, heavy metals, employees, robberies, licensing, inspections, overhead. Cultivation has a huge cost of goods sold. It's very, very expensive to run and maintain these facilities, as well as to grow consistently good harvests, and then also manage the market as well. The market prices for cannabis has been on a decline year after year, and we're almost at rock bottom. We're almost at the cost of production. So what that says is cannabis cultivation is quickly becoming a commoditized market. And what a commodity is when the market sets the price. It's not the producer that sets the price. So a commodity is governed by the entire market itself, and any one producer has no say in what they're gonna sell it for. You have some outliers where there's certain brands associated, or they have certain genetics, or they're putting it all in the retail jars and they only sell bulk at super high prices. If you're in that situation, that's a dream come true, and manage and maintain that as long as you can. The above average majority is not seeing those type of prices, and they're dictated by the market price, which makes growing weed a commodity. And I personally don't want to be part of a commodity because it's like a roller coaster ride. Some years might be good, other years, and more so it's the latter of the case, where most years you're just barely struggling to get by because you are at the mercy of the market prices. So these are just a few reasons why a cultivation license is challenging. And not only that, in New York, it's very challenging to get an indoor cultivation up and running. And if I was gonna be part of a cultivation for my brand, that's what I would focus on. Any outdoor or light dep, that's gonna be either for a budget brand or for hash rosin or some other kind of extracts. So for me personally, indoor cultivation is the way to go if you're gonna own a cultivation license. However, that's very challenging to do in New York right now. So now I'm gonna jump over to the manufacturing and processing license. This is also a key component of the supply chain. However, you're dictated by market prices again, where with a processing or manufacturing facility, you're capped by the ceiling of that facility. So whether that's square footage, employees, production capabilities, you're gonna hit a glass ceiling. You can never scale past that facility, what that facility can encompass. So I say that to say, you could be a pre-roll manufacturer, but you're only gonna be able to roll a maximum amount of pre-rolls in an ideal situation. Whether that be how many pre-roll machines you can fit in the facility, how many employees you could fit in there, how many contracts you can get. There's always gonna be a limiting factor of how far that business can scale. The other component to processing is extraction, and it's the same thing. You got a double-ended issue with extraction because you need to have the supply chain of all the trim, all the biomass of whatever it is you're extracting. So you need to be linked with a good cultivator or own that cultivation as well as your processing license. So that way you're growing the biomass that your processing license needs to extract and turn it into extracts. However, if you don't have a cultivation license attached to your manufacturing, you're gonna be at the mercy of sourcing your biomass from other cultivators. And this can work well in certain instances, can work very well actually in certain instances, because as a processor, now you're able to just focus on processing, doing your extraction, doing whatever it is you're processing. However, if you don't have good supply chain partners and you don't have reliable farms that can give you consistent supply of biomass to extract, that's gonna be a huge limiting factor in the output of your processing license. On the flip side of that, let's say if you have a full amount of biomass consistently, that doesn't solve your problem either, because now you extract it into these extracts. Now you have to be able to sell those extracts at market price, which again becomes a commodity at a certain point, because as you get a certain amount of manufacturers and processors operating, a certain amount of farms, once you hit this critical mass, it means that there's gonna be so much extracts on the market, that market price is gonna keep ratcheting down lower and lower and lower. And again, the market that sets the price, it becomes a commodity. So cultivation, manufacturing, and processing, these are all commodity driven markets. Even if they're not right now and they're at premiums, it's because the market hasn't matured yet and the supply chain hasn't leveled out. So if you're noticing that right now, get it while the getting's good and stack up as much as you can. But as you start to see the market mature, prices are gonna drop, competition's gonna go up, and it's gonna be harder and harder to pull those consistent profits that you may have been. So you hit that glass ceiling again in the manufacturing and processing license. The next supply chain vertical to talk about is distribution. And there's a couple different types of distribution. There's wholesale distribution and there's retail distribution. Wholesale distribution is gonna be focused on selling bulk materials. So it means you're either getting bulk flower pounds from cultivators, maybe you're getting pounds of trim, maybe you're getting liters of distillate, liters of HTE, kilos of hash rosin. Any of these things a distributor has access to can culminate together, put it on their menu, put it in their showroom, and sell these bulk products to other bulk buyers. And these bulk buyers potentially could be brands, they could be other facilities that are doing processing, could even be potentially retail stores that have in-house brands that are white labeling for their stores. Now that's a slippery slope in New York. Technically, if you own a retail license, you can't own any other licenses. But as we all know, in America, lawyers, they can make shit happen, and there's gonna be retailers that have some form of interest or some form of partnership with brands where they're gonna be doing white label in-house brands. So that's a separate video topic we'll go over. However, as a distributor, you have a wholesale distribution model. You also have a retail distribution model. Wholesale distribution model, I think we're all very comfortable with. We all understand that a bit. However, on the retail distribution model, this could also be referred to as 3PL, third-party logistics, third-party fulfillment, brand fulfillment. All these things are all considered retail distribution. And what that means is a brand that has finished goods puts them into possession of the distributor, and that distributor now distributes those finished goods, packaged goods, whether that's flower, pre-rolls, vapes, edibles, doesn't matter, but they're consumer ready goods, consumer packaged goods that go out to these retail locations. So the distributor, a retail distributor, is going to be responsible for warehousing the finished goods and then receiving the orders that your sales team submits. So the retail distributor is going to pick those orders out of their warehouse, put it on their distribution truck, and deliver it to the retail stores whenever that store is on the next stop on their route. And so this is a very critical function to the retail industry. A good distributor can make or break your brand. So with a distributor, there's also a glass ceiling to this. There's only so many deliveries you can do in a day. There's only so many vans you can have. There's only so much warehouse space you can have. There's only so much market share you can have. Plus, you have the liability of warehousing all these products in a climate-controlled, safe, reliable facility, as well as all the supply chain logistics from not only the facility and the climate control there, but then the vehicles, the climate control in the vehicles, the insurance, the compliance that goes with registering those vehicles as commercial vehicles. And in most states, you got to register those on a federal level to the Department of Transportation, which is a whole nother aspect. And you have to get, certain special lettering on the side of the truck. You have to have a certain registration. You have to go through certain hoops that they make you jump through to get these commercial Department of Transportation licenses for your vehicles. So it's not just like pulling up your truck, loading it up with stuff and just going off. These compliant distribution vehicles usually require certain type of security, like a security cage built in. You also are going to need some kind of a safe or some kind of a way to securely transport cash. And that's the other function of the distributor, is they're dropping off products at the stores, but they're picking up cash to pay those invoices. So another thing that's really, really beneficial is in New York, they report stores that don't pay their invoices. So I've done other videos on this. I'm not going to dive too deep into this, but basically as a brand, you're sometimes subject to have to give your products to the stores up front. Basically, you got to front them the product so that they can sell it and then give you back the money. And this, in the business world, is called net terms. So you identify how long you're giving them. Is it 15 days? Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? Those are their net terms. So if it's net 30, they have 30 days to pay their invoice. The issue in California is these stores don't adhere to those days. If they agree to net 30, you're lucky to get paid in 45 days, maybe 60 days. So it's really up to them when they're ready to pay. However, in New York, if they don't abide by the net terms set out, they actually get put on blast by the state. They get sent out, their name gets sent out, their license gets sent out to all the other license holders, letting them know this is a bad actor, they're not paying their invoices. And if that continues, they're also subject to potentially even getting their license penalized or removed. So this is a huge win for brands in the New York market. And that's what I'm gonna get into next is the retail license. And then we're gonna go over the most profitable way to make money in New York in the licensed cannabis industry. If you're interested in more on that topic, be sure to check out the video I made on how I got my brand into stores, building $1 million cannabis brand. There's a lot of key information in there that goes along with some of the stuff I'm talking in this video. The next vertical to go over is retail. And retail, to me, is the biggest burden. It's the one thing that I've stayed far, far away. And I don't plan to get involved with retail, at least anytime soon. And the reason why is it's one of the most risky licenses. It's one of the most expensive licenses, not only to start, build out, and maintain, but you're up against a limited amount of sales. And in my opinion, the sales you have now are gonna continue to decline over time. Because as a retail location, maybe now things are good. However, there's multiple variables in place that gives us a lot of evidence to show that these retail locations are not gonna be highly profitable over time. And in fact, they're gonna be highly burdensome and highly risky. So be careful if you're getting into the retail side of things. Be sure that you have solid retail experience, and not just in cannabis. And also don't fool yourself if you have a lot of solid retail experience in other sectors and not cannabis. Don't think you're gonna come into cannabis and be some all-star operator that just changes the entire industry because you have some crazy retail experience in some other component of the industry. It doesn't work like that. Cannabis is its own monster, it's its own beast. You could come from retail director of Louis Vuitton, it doesn't matter. You could be some of the biggest retail stuff in the world and come into cannabis and fall flat on your face. So I say that, I'm saying this out of all honesty and looking out for the best of whoever's watching. I'm not saying that to talk shit. I understand some of you guys watching either have retail licenses. You might have the right to a provisionary retail license and you don't have a location yet. You also might already have a location and have your license granted, but you might not be operational yet. Or you might have a retail license that is operational. And in any part of this process of having a retail license, I'm sure if you went and talked to the majority of retail license holders, you would hear more horror stories than success stories. And I'll do a separate video on why. However, some of the key reasons why are you're stuck in a single location. So you can't expand outside of that location. If you want to expand outside of that location, you literally have to open up more and more locations. Each location requires its own license, its own compliance, its own startup costs. And the startup costs for a single retail location is exponential. It's in the millions. And it's an ongoing cost too. So it's not like you just drop $1 million and you got the store. It's a very in-depth ongoing cost. So when you look at that, you say, okay, we have this huge upfront cost, as well as ongoing carrying costs, as well as fees that are just not in your favor, whether that be from a higher rent, your insurance is gonna be higher, your taxes are gonna be higher, your payroll is gonna be higher, Your in-store build-out is going to be higher because these stores are competing for consumers' attention. So now the store has to build the store as nice as possible, as fancy as possible, as unique and novel as possible. And in doing so, it's a huge, huge cost and overhead. So retail is almost like a sinking ship. The only way to really win in retail, in my opinion, is if you have a single retail location, it needs to be in a winning location. Not just an okay location, but a winning location. There needs to be good parking. There needs to be good foot traffic. I know in New York, not as many people may drive, but still you gotta think about that parking situation. How's that gonna work? You can't just bet that your retail is just gonna serve only people walking by. So parking is a big issue. Foot traffic is a bigger issue, especially in New York, based on what street, what corner. That could be a huge determining factor on whether or not you have hella foot traffic, average foot traffic, or low foot traffic. So your location is highly dependent on this. Now, take it a step further, you have a large pool of people looking for retail locations. They might have the ability to apply for a retail license and be qualified for that. However, they might not have a retail location identified and locked down on a lease. And the way that these counties work, with these cities work, is there's only certain neighborhoods that you can actually put a license at. And they zone it for certain things. So they'll say, okay, only retail licenses can be in these type of zoned areas. Cultivation, manufacturing, processing. These licenses got to be more in industrial areas. You can't just have that like in a neighborhood or on a commercial street or something like that. It needs to be in a warehouse district. So the zoning laws are important. You can't just go find any retail location and just open a dispensary. It's got to be in the right zoned area. It's got to have a lot of the right features that the state sets out for their compliance. So the landlords immediately will know if their property is in one of these key locations. And if it's in one of these key locations that a retail license could apply for, the landlord's gonna jack that rent up right away. So now you're up against potentially 3-4 times the average cost of rent for any business. Then you're at the mercy of the foot traffic and the parking of that location. So you're almost set up to fail from the beginning unless you get that winning location. And then the cost to get the lease dialed in, you're gonna have your security deposits, also the credit checks. You're gonna have to do a personal guarantee, which I think a lot of people overlook. Personal guarantee means you're literally personally guaranteeing it. It's not on an LLC, it's nothing. If that company goes bankrupt, a personal guarantee still means they could come after your house, your assets. You're personally guaranteeing the cost of that lease. So if that's a 5-year lease and you're paying $30,000 a month in rent, so what's that? Over the course of a year, you're gonna be paying about $400,000 in rent. Now let's say you have a 5-year lease on that. That's $2 million that you're on the hook for. Whether that store makes any money, whether it even opens up or not. You sign that personal guarantee, means you owe that landlord $2 million over the next 5 years. And he's gonna come after you for that no matter what. He doesn't care if you don't open. He doesn't care if you're not making money. He doesn't care if the market isn't good. You're gonna end up in court with a lawsuit against you, and you're gonna have to do a settlement. And if you had a $2 million personal guarantee, maybe you'll settle for $1 million. They'll accept payments. You're gonna be on the hook for that. So be careful about getting into personal guarantees in these licensed locations because they're all gonna require them, whether you have a distro, processing, retail. But once you're in this personal guarantee, you're screwed if you can't make that business work. And you gotta get that personal guarantee from the get-go in order to even get the lease, in order to even apply for the license, to even have that license attached to the address. So a store to me is just a big red flag. Just stay as far away from that as possible. The only way it makes sense is if you're part of a tried and true operational team that's already owned and operated retail stores. And it doesn't even have to be in that state. It could be, some of the most successful retailers here in California are the ones that own multiple locations. They have an internal operations team that basically runs operations for all these locations. So now they have the economy of scale. They're only paying one set of accountings, one set of management, one set of HR, one set of compliance, and they handle it for all the stores. But let's say you own 1 or 2 stores, you still need to have that same team. You still need to have the finance team, the compliance team, the store operations team, the management, the employees. That still has to happen. So that economy of scale, if you have 10 or 20 stores, you can spread that out amongst those stores. So retail only works if you have a huge war chest and you have the ability to actually operate it profitably. And the chances of that happening are very low. It's almost a better chance to go play the lottery. So what you all been waiting for is finding out what the most profitable aspect of the licensed cannabis industry is and how to get into it. And if you haven't figured it out already, it's starting a licensed cannabis brand. And the reason why is because it's got the majority of the upside. You can also scale it outside of that state. You can branch out to other states. You can branch out to the hemp market, the THCA market, the international global markets. And this is a huge, huge, huge opportunity right now. It's never happened before and it's never gonna happen again. Legalization is on the ground floor right now, and the best way to get in is to start a brand. And think about it with the alcohol industry. The majority of people that capitalize in the alcohol industry are the brands. You never hear about the production facilities or the cultivators growing the hops or the wine growers. Here in California, people that grow wine, they're getting pennies on the dollar. The real money is made as the wine brand. The wine brand buys it the lowest market price. It's a commodity. They buy it at commodity prices. They don't even have to manufacture it. There's plenty of independent wine manufacturers out here with squeeze your grapes, make your wine. All the brand is doing is developing their packaging, developing their marketing, developing their branding, and providing sales. And in a lot of cases, they're not even doing the sales themselves. They're getting with a good distributor who handles the sales for them. So ultimately, all that brand is doing is seeking out these key supply chain partners and building their brand and focusing on the branding and marketing. And that's the strategy to take from alcohol and focus on in licensed cannabis, is let all these other license holders carry that burden. The cultivators gonna carry the burden of cultivation, manufacturers and processors, let them do the packaging, do the pre-rolls, do the extraction, because again, they're gonna hit glass ceilings. So I don't wanna hit a glass ceiling, I wanna be able to scale 100 million, 300 million, $500 million. You know, like you wanna hit these numbers, you're not gonna do it in one single state. You're not gonna do it in one single market. You have to be in New York, you have to be in California, you have to be in Florida, you have to be international, you have to be in Europe. So these are key situations that you can't overlook and you can't be naive to just because you're a local to New York or you have the right to get a license and you don't want to squander that right. It's almost better, it's almost a blessing to either, if you have a right to apply, get some operational partners that actually can handle that burden, that can cover those costs, that can carry those carrying costs, that can handle the compliance, that can handle the operations. Because if you're anything like me and you come from this industry and you've been selling packs, you've been moving around, you're just on the go. You don't want to sit there and deal with headaches of like compliance coming in. Oh, this employee just quit. What are we going to do? We need to find a new grower. We need to find this. We need to do this. I'd rather deal with how are we going to get to Europe? What's the cost to bring the team out there? What's the event? What's our sponsorship cost to do this event? How many people are going to be at the event? These are issues I want to be focused on, not focused on, oh shit, the state needs to come in and do a inspection. Oh, our track and trace system isn't matching the state's records, so they're going to come in and do an audit. Rent's due next month, but we just paid excise tax. We have no money to pay rent. We just had a robbery at the facility. Insurance costs just went up. Taxes are due. Like all these things that a brand just does not have to worry about. You know, the biggest extent of a brand is marketing, overhead, such as your packaging costs, your raw material costs, and then sales and marketing. And so these are very hefty problems to really focus on anyway, but I'd rather have these things to focus on rather than external things that I can't control, such as licensing, compliance, taxes, robberies, things that just you're primed for if you're a license holder. So as a brand, the upside is astronomical and the downside is much, much smaller. So if you are thinking that you have to get a license in order to participate in the license market, you're completely wrong. What happens is, as a brand, you can identify these supply chain partners, the ones that own and operate these licenses, and you can actually align your brand as a client to these license holders. And now you're bringing these license holders revenue because now you're paying them a per piece cost, let's say to a processor to package your weed, or a per piece cost to roll your pre-rolls, or you're paying a cultivator to buy your flower from, and they just got to sell you the flower, you go handle the rest. So it helps solve these problems for these license holders because now they can just grow and just sell it to you. The manufacturer can now just package your flower, roll your pre-rolls, and now you're a client of them. You're bringing income to them. And now they rely on you. They rely on your business. They rely on your brand to be successful. So you want to be in that situation. As the brand, you're technically the buyer. And think about that in the wholesale side of things. As the wholesale buyer nowadays, the market's in your favor. You know, you can pull up to these cultivators, distributors, and negotiate heavily, you know, and they're in a position where they need to sell this stuff, and you're like, yo, I respect your prices, but I can only buy all this if the price is here. And a lot of times these suppliers are gonna negotiate. So as a brand, you have the power. It's the brand's market right now. It's the buyer's market. The upside is astronomical because you can scale outside of states in parallel. You don't have to wait. You don't have to do anything. You could be opening in New York, Florida, California, Europe. You could be doing this all in the same year. And then from there, you're focused on marketing, developing a quality product that your customers can resonate with, and more importantly, building an emotional connection with your customers, your brand demographics, your followers, and running that brand properly. And so if that's your sole focus, it's gonna be your quickest path to $1 million in profit. It's gonna be your quickest path to $10 million in profit. And then the biggest thing, the buyouts, if you plan to build your brand as a buyout to another bigger company in the future, the brands are where it's gonna be at. These facilities are going under quick. It doesn't matter if it's in California, New York, or other states, Michigan. All these facilities, it's overbuilt. The supply chain is drowning underwater, and owning a license is the quickest path to bankruptcy. So do yourself a favor, look into starting a brand first, and then as you scale your brand up, build your brand successfully, get sales coming in, build up your war chest, build up your capital reserves, then it becomes beneficial to start looking at buying licenses, or more importantly, my strategy is partnering with license holders, investing into their operation that you see as a confident long-term play, letting them to continue running operations, and you just are a silent investor in that license now. You secured that piece of your supply chain. You're an owner in that license. However, you're not an operator. So that to me is the ideal strategy. That's been my strategy. That's why I've been getting out of the licenses that I've owned over the past years, migrating over to just focusing on brand build outs, getting my brands out there internationally. We're headed out to Germany for the second time next month. We've been to Spain, England, Europe a few times, and it's huge opportunities over there. So the ways to branch out your brand, we get into that in my school community. I also have my guidance program where I teach people how to start and scale a licensed cannabis brand without owning a license. And ideally, the ground floor for this is either California or New York. Set your foundation in one of these states, get into the licensed retail stores there. That builds you credibility. And now you can go out to these other countries, these other states, these other license holders, and they see that you're a reputable brand from one or two of the biggest markets in the world. And now they have your attention, they have your respect, they want to work with you. So start small, keep your operational costs down, start your brand wisely, and let's talk. If you want to jump on a call, click the link below in the description and book a call with me.